Hello everybody. It's Fraser here with a update on, well, that's an update. This is actually a video on the introduction and use of the power of probability version 6. It has been a long time coming, and possibly now, I think, 4 years since this was changed. What most of you may be familiar with is the original power of probability, which has been in use down here, and that now has been replaced with what we're calling shorthand PO6, or power of probability version 6. There is a lot to discuss, and I'm probably not going to be able to cover everything in this one video, and that's probably a good thing, because I could spend a couple of hours just talking about all the changes and the use, rather than going through every little detail. I want to go through the highlights, basically. And for those of you who want to drill down into the detail, I will be providing there's a document here which you'll hopefully be able to download and just look through everything at your leisure and ask questions. So there's everything there about the workings, what's going on behind the scenes, and then just general user guides as well on how to start using this. But for the most part, you're going to install it and then do nothing else. Everything else has been as automated as it can be. Really, for the majority of people here, you're going to, once it's got added to your chart, you're not going to have to touch anything else. But there will be some instances where people who, depending on what kind of investor or trader you might be, you might want to change the frequency of signals or reduce the noise. Then in that circumstance, you may be looking at changing user settings, but for the most part, not really at all. Now, wow, what has changed? Chapter 1, what has changed indeed? So much. Where to begin? One of the bigger changes, in fact, there's this little table down here on the bottom right-hand side of the screen. One of the changes that is probably the most different here is the ability for the tool to recognize the market type. And it's more than just recognizing the market type, but when the market or asset class is determined, then how the probability engine operates is also changed. And I don't want to get too technical or mathematical here, but we have different types of probability distributions that are applied to the data that's gathered, depending on the asset class. And in the tool here, I actually have a little animation. So we've got a discussion here about the normal distribution, which fits generally quite a lot of different asset classes. Then the Laplace distribution, which is specifically tailored to cryptocurrencies. Again, you don't need to know a huge amount about this. What is important to know is that when these signals are meeting their thresholds, then that's when a signal prints. And when the thresholds are, when all the noise and different oscillator values are chopping and changing all over the place, you don't need to know what's happening specifically. You just need to know what's most likely probable going to happen next, and this is what this animation is. Again, for most of you, you will not need to know about this. All you're interested in here is the signaling. So what else has changed here? I mean, there's so many great things. I would say that, of course, the probabilistic engine is one of the core changes. Before, in the previous version, it was a normal distribution for absolutely everything, regardless of asset class. Here, the distribution changes dependent on the asset class. Now, you can change that on the user settings and fix it, but this has been now tested for the past, 4 or 5 months. and it's been tailored in such a way that the settings on the distribution is fixed for that type of asset class, and I believe it to work quite well. But these could change in the future, but for the most part, it is working very well indeed. So the probabilistic engine is good. Asset aware, we've covered crypto versus asset aware modeling, we've covered that. Adaptive sampling. This is very cool. Previously, this is this little window down here. You've got, by the way, anytime you're not certain about what something does, just put the mouse over the heading and it will tell you what it is. The sample mode is now one of a nice little update. Actually, it's not little anything about it. This was, if I recall correctly, this took a few months to actually trigger down and get right. What in the previous model, you would have the distribution sample the same amount of data regardless of the time frame you were on, and it would also sample the same amount of data regardless of asset class or regardless of the market pivots. Now, what you have here is that the sample mode is determined where the market pivots are the highest. So, for example, if when you install the tool, what it's looking for is where market pivots align with signals. So if you can imagine in your head, you've got market pivots and then signaling. What time frame do those two things align the most? That's the value you see down here, and that's the length of the window. When these signals trigger, what's actually happening is the data is gathered over a window of a period of time, and that window changes depending on, do these conditions of probability align with pivots in the market. Very cool. So this is another step up on accuracy. Now, it might be a good time to mention, what you'll notice here is at the beginning of some charts, right or wrong, you'll have a lot of erroneous signals here at the very beginning. This is happening because the data has not been yet made available, and the noise only goes away with time. So after the beginning passes, the signals will become a lot cleaner, and that's what you want to see. So don't pay too much attention. There was an attempt, or maybe we should hard code it and just make sure nothing appears at the beginning, but it increased the code complexity, and that's something we want to avoid. I'm all for keep it simple, keep it stupid. So yeah, sampling length is the adaptive sampling window is now fully coded in there, and it matters not which chart or asset class you view, that will always be adaptive. You can change it in the user settings, where have I put it? It should be down here under advanced. Watch me try to use this now. This is me. So I've had I've put this in such a way now that I've been using it for now probably testing it for the past 4 or 5 months. And when I first put the user interface, it became clear to me, oh wow, this is getting really, really busy. I need to start taking things away, make it simpler. But in actual fact, what I've discovered is there is some real value in some of the options here. And it was a bit of a disservice to kind of remove them all. So instead, they're being listed in such a way of importance. The very top we'll discuss is the things that you'll change the most, if at all. The visual appearance here, and colors and codes. And there's some other visual changes here, the signal confidence, but I want to, here we go, the sample length. So we're going to fix it like this is what the original one did. We go here and you'll see signals maybe change and disappear. This is what the POP3 did. It was a fixed window, but now you're by default adaptive, and that's the way you want to leave it. It's phenomenal upgrade or phenomenal change, I think, in the way that signals are now tailored on time frame and market pivots. I just call the sampling window. I've got a bunch of printouts here because there's been so many updates and changes, and I've been putting off making this video. Every time I well, maybe it needs to be like several sections or several chapters, but here's an attempt to make just one long video. Signal quality is the next area. What have we got here on signal quality? Yeah, now this is interesting. I've actually had this question before. On the sampling mode, Madun distribution, and where is it? Here we go. Signal time frame. So at the moment, I've got it very base, 16 minutes to 6 days. So what does that mean? In some cases, you are going to, let's say, if I go down to the 2-day chart here, and okay, we've got a couple of great buy signals. Let's drop that further. Let's go down to the daily chart so the noise kind of picks up. Here we have some good buys, and clearly the market's continued in its downtrend. Now, what you have, if you go into the settings, imagine for a moment I'm only interested in signals from the weekly chart. And okay, that now you're not going to see any signals on the time frame. No, get rid of that. The only signals you're going to see are those that have been triggered on the weekly time frame. So you might be in a daily chart here, and here you have a good sell on the weekly chart. So you can keep following the daily chart and notice the uptrend continues. But keep in mind the signal here is coming from the weekly time frame, which means the more the moving window. What's the sample length? The six now does not mean 6. A window of 6 days, perhaps it means 6 weeks. And in turn, that means you've given the probability distribution or the probability engine a lot more data than is now viewed in this daily time frame. So this signal here carries much more weight than signals on the current time frame. Now that might be very good for somebody who's just really interested in not being very active in the market and just wants to see things happening on a higher time frame, and then you're using the daily chart to make the window smaller. Again, here we have a very nice, you can see how clean the signals are now, compared to just using the overlay on its own. I have selected, in this case, a time frame of 3 days, a higher time frame of 3 days, and that should be in the table. Here you go, signal time frame 3 days. And here you have this great pie down here. I don't know where that was at, 49 cents, and it didn't actually print incredible sell until $2.60. Wonderful. So at the moment, what I'm doing is I'm keeping it at the very base. I've got it down at 60 minutes. 60 minutes, so 1 hour. Let's make sure the chart is equalized. Yep, okay, 6. So a 6-day chart, essentially 6 years of data. So that's signal time frame. What's the next thing to touch on? Multi-timeframe. So that's multi-timeframe. And then okay, so yes, waiting. So we've got up here on the right hand side BTC waiting. So as you know, when it comes to cryptocurrencies, we have both USD and the BTC pairs. And if let's add in XRP BTC, and now we have so same really strong signals here on the waiting for the BTC pair. This chart here, the BTC pair, is superimposed on top of the dollar chart, or rather 50% of that BTC pair is weighted against the USD pair, meaning the signals you see on top here are not just only, so it's 100% USD, and then following the USD signals, we superimpose the BTC weighting on top of that. If there's a genuine value flowing into an asset class, then you're going to see volume or the strength of signals across in both pairs. It doesn't matter if it's USD, Bitcoin pair, the lira, the Swiss franc. If there's a value moving into the assets, the signals are going to trigger across all those pairs. And that's essentially what's happening here. The weighting by default is 50%, but you can go through the settings and adjust that to increase it for more confidence. While I'm talking about that weighting, here's some this probability cutoff is something else you can use. So in the animation, you've seen how there's the 60% cutoff. So once the probability, let me put this another way. So when certain conditions are met, the question that the engine asks is the probability of the next value being X or Y being determined? Is, say, for an incredible buy, it has to be 90% or over. But then once that 90% condition is met, the confidence has to be at a certain threshold, which is 60%. And that's usually measured in time by default. And once that threshold's crossed, then that's when you'll see the print. And that's what's determined here in this setting. For the most part, it's kept by default at 60%, but you can change that. I've not found a need to change that. It really comes down to the kind of individual you are. If you are looking at this at a high time frame, like that I'm showing here in 6 and 5 day charts, you're not going to touch that. If you're somebody that spends their time in the 4-hour chart and that sort of level, then yeah, that's going to matter more and more to you. I would recommend changing it, but it exists anyway. Yeah. Now, what is the next thing here? Risk score. Now, massive update here. You can see in the, I need to change that avatar. In the Patreon page, we have how to find the best crypto plays. So this is how to score the positions or measure the number of points we attribute to a position. And once we cross a level of 20, then that's when it's considered that the risk has become acceptable. It doesn't mean it's a stronger bet. It means that the level of risk now is reached a point where if we are using a high probability position that's been identified and then it crosses the threshold of 20, risk is dropping off very quickly. You always want to be in a position that's trending at 20 and trending higher. And now that is, for the most part, I should say the risk score or the automatic calculation has been a work in progress for about 2 years now. And it's not perfect, but it's got to a point where it really is. There's been a lot of work and a lot of adaptation in here, a lot of changes, and it's made a lot of sense to now include it because I know for a fact that not a great many people, it's a very time-consuming task scoring individual positions, and especially if you are having to do this time and time again, it takes time, and there's not many shortcuts. So here it is now. It's introduced automatically. It will change per asset class. You can see we're looking at a crypto here at the top of the tooltip, but if I change this to a stock, it will change automatically. Yeah. Some of you will notice that I have left the stock market questions, in particular to the support and resistance levels on the crypto chart as an addition. That's not a mistake. That's done by intention, and it's just adding an extra layer of confidence and weighting. One of the cool things here is that while the score changes, you'll see this bottom bar here telling you about the trending. So this here, you can change this. At the moment, it is set to it looks back every 10 20 and 30 bars in the past, and the color is color coded to represent the score. And now you can tell this one here is rising. So previously the score was 11, and now it's hitting 22. It's over 20 for XRP. Now I can see a great buy here, and that's the last signal here. And that will only trigger. So what it means is that at some point there must be a great buy. I was going to say that this will only print a score when in the 6-day window a signal is printed. So right now XRP is printing a great buy signal. So, and it's got a fairly good score of 22. So it's showing monthly candle support. Now if I click on this, sure enough, we've got, have we? The previous monthly candle. It's not great, is it? Where is it detecting the monthly candle? So what it is, it must be these two monthly candles, because this is the new month. And the way it works is we've got this monthly candle closing in proximity to the previous monthly candle. That's why it's been scored. And it's given it a value, this score monthly candle, 3 from 3. So yeah, that's why it's been scored that way. And let's see, what chart was it on the 6-day? Okay, so 6-day 21. Very good. So that's the scoring that has been introduced there, and now that will help you a lot to just look at something. If you're selecting a chart, I think I had one here just randomly. So what happens is if the last signal to print was indeed a sell signal, the value is just going to drop straight to 0. And when it drops straight to 0, it means at some point in that 6-day window, a sell signal must have printed, which is reliable. So you're going to ignore that chart, generally speaking, even if it has a good condition on a higher time frame or a monthly chart. It might well be that price action is looking supportive in an uptrend, when you change it down. But the score should generally remain the same. So after you go over 6 days, it's coded in such a way to use the last signal that printed. Here I am on a 7-week chart, which is rather ridiculous. Let's come back down to 4 weeks. The last signal, if it's a sell signal, after the 6-day window, then that will fall to 0, the score, and it shouldn't be something you're looking at anymore. And you can see here in the 6-day window, as long as the 6-day window produces no buy signal, or if sell signals outnumber buy signals, you're going to see a 0 violation. So it means it's time to move on. There's nothing to see here. Let's go back to XRP. 6-day window. Here we go. So yes, that was questions and fully structured interface action. Oh yes, alerts. Here's a good one. You have an alarm here now, so you can add an alarm to here. Select POP6. Select buy signal plus risk score over 20, and you can now be alert when XRP or any other asset, in fact better still, so you can now be alerted when the score and buy signal is a certain condition, or depending on your TradingView account, you can go up here. I have got records, so you can go to your watch list, and you can actually now have an alarm across an entire watch list, which will trigger anytime anything in that watch list triggers a buy signal plus a score over 20. Very nice. I like that. I've been using that for now over the last few months to identify what charts look good, and to help me publish ideas and charts, and it works. for the most part, yeah. There's actually something quite big that I've got planned for this, for a market-wide scanner, but that's for a later month. It's under work and in progress at the moment. But right now, it's you can do this in TradingView depending on your membership level. To add a watch list, add an alarm over the entire watch list for a buy signal plus a trending score, a rising score of 20 and over. Very nice. So now what do we have? Let's look at some past ideas before I conclude. Here, here you'll notice I've got this on. So let's change it back to stocks. Here you'll have an example. How do we know this works? So let's go to Quire. This idea was published a while back. It was one of my better trades from the last couple of years. It was quite rewarding for myself, and we had. But I use the tools here. Now you can see a lot of erroneous signals. Zoom out. I keep zooming out to mark. At the moment it says 6, so it means if I think 6, so I've got a length of 7 now. So let's go to the weekly chart. It means that pivots and signals were close on the weekly. I can zoom out and I can see, generally speaking, that's been true. Market signals have been printing very close to the pivots. A pivot doesn't mean the market bottom or top. It just means you can see, look at this great buy signal, for example, here. That was definitely a pivot in the market. And while it was overall on the top, it was still 80%. I'll keep zooming out because I prefer to. So here's a very good. There's the idea here for Quire when it was published. Now what I'm going to do. Let's just so somewhere between 2 weeks and 1 week. Let's move up the time frame to see if there's. Well, that's very nice. So that's actually kind of late. Let's stay with 2 weeks. Still a bit late. Let's fall under 2 weeks. And still a bit. Here we go. 2. Oh, it's still a bit late. What am I trying to do here? Okay. So let's go back to that 2 week chart. What I'm going to do is, at the moment, it says that it was incredible sell, the last signal, so the score's dropped to 0. What I'm going to do here is replay, start new. Hope this works. What I'm trying to do is show you the changing score over time. So at the moment, the last signal picked up. It's showing a score because it's picked up. I can see question 1 is 3 out of 3, meaning at some point in the 6-day window, an incredible buy signal was currently printing. But at the moment, it's a moderate score. Now let's press the play button and watch. What I want you to watch is risk score and trend bars as it's moving through time. And you can see the moderate is climbing, but even price is falling, which is extraordinary. And here we can see the incredible buy printing. Now there it is. Incredible buy switched on. Score keeps climbing. And I've got the trend is falling. But the score is definitely rising. Now we've got. Oh, here we go. That's moving. So you can see the color coding changing and the rising score with time. It takes patience. It really does. It can be really frustrating sometimes when I purchased this, I had to watch price action drop around 30% before the uptrend really got underway. I used the 2 week chart for this idea, and I used, I think it was when price really took off, just that spike there, I dropped into a 2-day chart. It was before for the exit. But you get the idea. That this is like a nice live tool to watch your positions and keep a good eye on them. I think that's all I wanted to say for the update of this. I'm sure people are going to have questions, and there is going to be more updates in the future. I've covered all the big topics, which include looking at past charts here and identifying how the tools changed from the previous version. You're selecting, asset classes are being automatically selected. The market signals are not just a matter of the probability engine triggering depending on the time frame you're on. It's actually finding out what the best window of time to look at, which aligns with the pivots in the market by default, which is incredibly powerful. It's a powerful update in its own right. What else have we done? The distribution selection we mentioned as well. I'm just going to, I can go through, I had not made any examples. This was just kind of like a bit of a, let's just do a conversation and have a look at how it works, and there was a show and tell. But again, there's going to be questions. Here's a chart I'm looking at, not particularly this. Which one was I looking at the other day? I had a question on ADA, for example, and it does print a score. Look, it's got quite a high score, 31, but the last signal's not showing, meaning I have a buy signal in the 6-day window. So I'm on this 2-week chart. So let's now drop down to a 6-day and below. See that signal. Indeed, it is incredible buy. So the market is indeed, there's a high probability you're going to see an uptrend, but I don't think it by any means that it means it's like a recovery for new higher highs. More likely than not, when you zoom out, and this is multi-timeframe analysis at its core, you can see price actions, this large uptrending channel, and the conditions that started ADA off from the early years were on this 2-week, that's where they were found, on this 2-week chart, and triggered this signal. But those conditions aren't triggering going forward at the moment. So what we're likely to see here is a bear market rally of some sort before continuation. 2-week, this is a stock, just randomly selected, nothing in particular, no reason for choosing this. It's just to kind of show you the accuracy of market pivots, which is one of the strongest features and updates to this tool. So regardless of what time frame you're jumping around at, the tool is always going to try and align signaling with market pivots. It's quite difficult to it's quite important to stress how much of an important change that is from what was previously in POP3. What have we got lastly here? Here's a high score, so we've got a score of 37, so that's very high. And we've got a 1 of 3, so we must have a signal of a good buy in the 6-day window. Actually a great buy, but oh, okay, there you are. Great buy. Now it's been highlighted here because if I go to the 2-day chart, for those of you who've been listening to my work for a while, you'll notice that what we have here is an uptrend. You can see a higher low here and the next higher low here. The reason for the score being so high, I would assume, is because of all the support on the higher time frames. In fact, that's been found when looking left. If I just hover the mouse over here, you can see questions 14 through 17 on monthly, quarterly, biannual and annual is very high. And let's go and pick a 3-month chart. And sure enough, we can see candle bodies aligning on the 3-month in places. It doesn't have to be an exact candle body close, but the way the formula works is to ask if the height of the candle and take that height 2 to 3%, depending on the setting, 2 to 3% of that candle height is matched on the close of its neighbouring candle, or in any other candle looking left, depending on how you've defined the window of time. That's how that's been measured. All these questions generally invoke a new security call, so that's actually something worth mentioning. In POP6, it's actually quite resource intensive. There's around 25 security calls, security requests. That's a request for price information on a time frame, a fixed time frame, and that's demanding bandwidth. So and compute. You'll need a reasonably. Most machine. I'm using a MacBook here for this, and it's perfectly fine. Yes, I think that's all there is. Let's have a look at Ethereum here. I'm just jumping around charts now because, well, there's just to give you a demonstration here is I don't know what I'll find. It's very incredible buy. It was very much, notice how well it pivoted with the market low. So on the 10-day chart, good buy. We've got a sell, incredible sell. It's not at the very peak, but it's not trying to be. Good buy here. It works. It works, and what I love about this is that the only thing that's going to get me away from giving this attention is my emotions. It's not going to be a chart signal, and there will be times where I've actually ignored signaling, and it's frustrating when you do that and look back and look left and wonder why. Here we have a score over 20, which is capturing monthly support, which I can kind of see why. For good reason. There's many monthly candles closing at this current level for Ethereum. So while I'm not particularly bullish going forward in Ethereum, if I fall down to what's it, a 10-day chart, and it's got a risk score, so it's got a good buy in there. It has some possibility of a move up, but I don't think it's going to be a move up to new highs. Anyway, I'll leave some text and notes below, and if you have any questions, then by all means just drop them below, and I'll answer them as quickly as possible. All the best, Fraser.